Right, thanks everybody for having me here. When Dave Strickland called me up and asked me to do this, I was like, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. I'm not used to this. Speaking on fine, but he said I only had 15 minutes. So I'm going to do the very best I can. I've loved everything that we've been speaking about and everything we've heard so far. Meeting Tim, obviously, I've actually used some of his work to develop Risky Kids, along with some of the work that's being done by the Latrobe team at Judith Lumley. But one of the things that I think is most important here is where Tim said it yesterday and said it again today. We're not looking to turn back the clock. We're not looking to go back in time and say, get back to some golden age. There's some things which have changed, which are good, but we understand so much more now, thanks to researchers, for example, like Jenny, like the team from Latrobe. We understand so much more now. And Risky Kids as a program, this is really what we do. And I'd love to speak a little bit about that now. When it comes, I'll probably give you a look. Alrighty, so this is me. If you click on that button, yeah, someone's, just to go back and then see if you can navigate to that and click on it. Yeah, just, drop this go. Not working. That's right. Nonetheless, okay, so you're not going to be able to see the proof in the pudding though. That's me falling down some stairs and then shortly after there I am on fire. But, I'm sorry. So I'm a professional stunt actor. I always like to put that in quotation marks. Recently I had another stunt professional say, a lot of the time just professional play fighters, which I think goes quite well. I enjoy it. Obstacle racing, ultra endurance, fitness industry consultant, and of course Risky Kids. That's my background. So I'm very grateful that I had those experiences and that background because it led me to Risky Kids, and I feel like it just put me in the right space at the right time and with a little bit of an inquisitive mind. Okay, I won't go near it. But I wish we had that because, I'm in a stormtrooper uniform, I fall down the stairs, next thing being engulfed in fire. I was going to make a joke which would tie into the idea of doing a risk-benefits assessment for that. But look, when it comes to the risk assessment for that, for example, I always like to say that I'm actually most comfortable. I'm actually very comfortable when I'm on fire. And I know it may sound strange, but I'm very calm and relaxed because, driving down the streets through Melbourne, I don't have a team of highly trained stunt professionals looking after me and watching my every move. So at those points, I usually feel quite calm. It's like getting a warm up. So what we're going to talk about today is we've got the Risky Kids program. I'm going to introduce you to that so you've got a bit of background about what we do and you understand exactly what we're looking for. I want to talk about the appetite for risk, which is obviously it's a great phrase I think that we're talking about a lot more now, which is wonderful, but I also want to finish off by talking about real harm in terms of the sorts of things we've been doing. I'm not great at standing still, but I will do my best. Okie doke. So, next one, let's see how we go on this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Risky Kids program. So what we do is we use moves and mindsets. They're at the heart of our program. So movement and active discussions with young people and their families, of course, about risk and about all of the complex things that go with it. We're also now very excited to be involved in research and education. So we're working with the team from Latrobe, who you're going to hear from next, in terms of better understanding all of these things. Because as Tim said, there's so much research out there about risk-taking and the healthy benefits of it, but some of the gaps in the knowledge and the understanding for me, at least as I've been able to find, is this dedicated guided process. So where are we going with it? If we're not simply turning back to the clock to free range, what's the next evolution for this? We don't simply just want to say, well, let's try and, at least as far as I'm concerned, don't want to just reintroduce risk in that free range model. We should have a conscious, active stake in it, especially since we have so many more skills. The challenge here, and so Coach Isaac's in the room, who you'll see feature in a moment, what we were doing here is we're working with them on creating a scene. So there's all sorts of elements here in terms of precision, in terms of understanding and having awareness of where the camera is. So it's a multifaceted risk and team engagement here that they're undertaking, and this would have taken a couple of takes, I imagine, to get. Yes. And this is not a Risky Kid. This is Coach Isaac. In the break, if you want to follow him outside, him and some of my coaches are probably going to jump around and do a few things. Alrighty. Thank you, team. Right, next one. So this is Risky Kids. This has been our development, and part of this is also to emphasise, I think, that concept of there being a huge appetite for risk. So what we've got here, program pilot, August 2018 in Berwick, Victoria, so down in the city of Casey. We launched the program officially about 6 months-ish later. We started off with about 18 kids, and they were just some of the members of my gym at the time. So we've begun to expand the program. We very quickly got ourselves up to about 300 members. There was an enormous response from the community about this, and which was funny because when I was developing the program, I had a school teacher say, "Are you sure you want to call it Risky Kids? Like, aren't people going to be like turned off by that?" And I said, no, it's important to have a conversation about it. And first, I think we're underestimating exactly what people understand. COVID lockdowns, good time. So we went online and we survived as best we could. COVID lockdowns ended. The fitness industry was hit hardest out of any industry in Melbourne with that. So we had over 365 days of lockdowns and program inability to run. But we began to expand. We ended up with a gradual return, 4 clubs, 800 plus members in January 2022. We've now introduced early years programming, so 1 to 5, and teens as well. Then we began working with, and we were approached actually, I was very grateful for the inquisitive mind of Dr. Bennett's, and she just saw us with a bunch of kids jumping around in a playground, and just a natural academic mind went, what is going on there? And so reached out to us, and we're now going through a research partnership with them. I mean, I say partnership, we provide the kids, they're doing all the research, which has been fantastic because we started this with a goal to understand. And so we're doing that every single day, but it obviously helps when we have some people who are professionals in that. Working with camps as well, which has been wonderful, in schools and working with educators. And then today, we've got over 1,200 members. We're now franchised and have limited licences available so that different organisations can run the program and education as well. So there's been a fantastic response for it. Kieran from Play Australia was really, it was very nice to hear you say yesterday, oh, so you've built it from the ground up. And it's sort of like to get there in a short time. But I put it down to the appetite. There's a lot of families out there who are very interested in this. And this is one of the things that Risky Kids will, and I might rub up against the insurance guys on this. Maybe a little bit of healthy conflict and discourse is great, I think. But risk in and of itself, and it's sort of something we go near, and everybody has gone near. But to me, I firmly believe that risk in and of itself is the heart of our program. It in and of itself has benefits inherently. So it isn't always about saying what sort of benefits do we need to consider up against risk. Sometimes risk is the benefit. All of its various outcomes shouldn't be attributed to something superfluous. It is actually the act of taking risk and the act of balancing. And we see this every day, every week with thousands of kids. So our focus is risk and challenge positive. This is very important to us to see these things as highly positive. We built the program from the ground up, and not just me, my entire team has had a hand in this in terms of understanding the day-to-day and the technical. How do we run this with families, with young people? And so what we did was we took the best practices. So Vic Health research, which has been done by the Judith Lumley Centre, a lot of that factored into us understanding things like resilience and how to get there. So for us, I saw this as a tangible way to take a lot of these new understanding. And of course, Tim, your work is actually in our research database as well. So it's us looking at how can we, I don't like to use the word weaponize it, but deploy, maybe, activate all of that science in a way that families can access. It's all about experiential learning, so learn by doing. So for example, if we say to kids, all right, failure is an important part of learning, the emotions that go alongside of it are tough, they all nod their heads, and then we say, okay, now we're going to fail, we're going to do some parkour and some ninja skills and fall off some things, and then they have to wrestle with that. But they're so on board with it because they understand that that's the benefit to becoming stronger. Individual, social, creative focused activities, it's all about helping the young people find their own way to learning. And we have, in the development, one of the things that we learned very quickly was our program was very accessible because risk is something which is universal. Play is something which is universal. It is a bedrock foundation with young people and humans, I think, when it comes to risk. And so because of that, and because of the nature of our program, and we did take steps to include it, we ended up having a large proportion of our community from the disability sector, neurodiverse kids, autism, ADHD, and that was something which we hadn't set out to do, but it was wonderful because they were able to participate in the core program. We didn't need to isolate and make it a different type of program for them, which I never see as truly integrative. And so what we ended up with was a two-way social reintegrative practice. So the La Trobe team is going to talk a little bit about what they've found in terms of the program and family experiences. I just wanted to quickly touch on some of the outcomes that we heard from families from an NDIS audit that we undertook as part of our registration process. So, for example, we would have families saying things like the Mindset program has been instrumental in developing greater resilience. And this is language from parents, by the way. One of the most useful out of all the therapies. And I always say we are not a therapy, okay? I like to say that therapy is my perspectives on health and well-being. I'm not going to go on to a segue with that. But intervening in a way is so important. And to look at risky kids and say it's a therapy, I always try and dissuade families of that notion. I say, if it's more powerful than therapy, that's different. Nonetheless, next please. Back one, sorry. More confident after attending and more likely to try things. Very important. Loves going and feels accepted for who he is. Very important. Progress demonstrated in the program and also now crossing over to school and other areas as well. So what we look at is when we make this risk-taking process and understanding how to take risks and this risk intelligence priority, young people understand how to disseminate that. They understand how to take that out into their world. So, next slide. Family experiences outcomes. I'm going to leave that for our wonderful team from La Trobe. They'll be speaking next to cover off on some of the things they've found. And that way, I feel like I'm a little bit biased if I'm telling you how great my program is. So yes, good to have some academics, hopefully, because I haven't seen this research too much yet. So I'm looking forward to it. Next, please. Appetite for risk. So we're all using the same language, which is wonderful. Next, please. When working with families, and these have been our experiences in a facilitated program, so please remember that families come to us because we say, your kids will take risks with us. So they come to us with this in mind. And mind you, that's a slightly biased sample, but as we discussed, we have grown very quickly, and it's very rare that we actually have too much pushback on that. So first off, there is a high value of risk in the community. They understand it, they want it, they still reflect on times as we all did when they were younger and the sort of things that they did. There is an understanding of the risk benefits. The families that we engage with predominantly understand these things. There is an understanding of their own fears and their own overparenting as well. Families are quick to learn, and there is a rapidly growing community at risky kids especially, I think, which indicates a strong appetite for it. And Tim said one of the things that I believe in very firmly as well, that we shouldn't be out to bash parents, especially the ones who are risk averse. We sort of had our bell curve with the knee pads at one end and the 3-week holiday at the other end. I don't like to criticise any of those families. Usually it's just too much of a good thing when there's overparenting. No parent wants the worst for their child. Next, please. However, we do also have common family interaction. So these are all things we're trying to understand as well, how best to serve young people and their families. And so we do find that we, of course, encounter avoidance behaviour from the families and, of course, from the kids. Usually with the kids, it's actually far, far easier to help them navigate it. But parents and guardians and families are the gatekeepers. So if they tell us that they're not going to bring their young person back, we won't have the opportunity to engage in any sort of behavioural support. So there is, of course, the discomfort over the experience of negative emotions in young people. When young people have a negative experience because they have fallen off a piece of equipment, scraped a knee, been challenged emotionally, the language that they'll use is things like, I'm bored, I don't want to go back, and they will find a way to not have to confront those feelings again. It's not to say that every single one of those moments means that that is not true, but our experiences have been that young people often don't have all of that language, and so it becomes critical for us to help them. I encourage families and educators to see those moments as a young person not saying I'm bored, but saying I need help. I'm trying to understand my feelings here, and we can be involved in that, and that's the most important part, is engaging that. And we will also find that when families are not familiar with those moments and not familiar with confronting them or are ill-equipped to do so, they end up being very quick to abandon their conscious approval of risk, of discomfort. So to put it simply, they will come to us and say, yes, we want our kids to be uncomfortable. Yes, we're totally down with this risk thing. Oh, my kid says they're unhappy. No, we're not doing this anymore. And they'll use language like, I don't want to force them to do anything they don't want to do. We're just trying to find their thing. And so that's language which we've really begin to lock down on and see as an early indicator of families being very quick to move on. And there's some things that we're looking into around novelty addiction, for example, in terms of how we can help families to not get into a loop with that kind of behaviour. And so what we do is we educate. And I think this is the most important part. And, with all of the wonderful technology at our disposal, mostly wonderful, right, Tim? What we are finding is that we can get to families and we can help them understand these things in a powerful way. And so we've got early intervention resources for families. If you look at our website, riskykids.com, as of yesterday, we just updated it. So it should look pretty good. But if you find anything that doesn't work, just email me. That'd be great, thank you. And of course, I use the term courageous parenting. So when we're raising young people, it is about being courageous. In the moment where a young person is facing a challenge and an obstacle that they have to overcome to triumph, to grow, that's just the same moment for the parents. It is just the same. No one's given anybody a handbook. And so it's just the same moment with just as much reward to help a young person to navigate those moments. That's why I always tell my team they need to consider themselves very lucky to have those moments every single day with young people. I'm going all right? For time? Have I raptured you? Have I? Okay, great.
Wrap up when you're ready, please.
Okay, wonderful. That's good because I'm at the last section. Here we go. So this is where I wanted to talk about real harm, at least the way that we see it and the way that I see it. Next slide. So University of New South Wales recently did some work. So Professor David Eager and Dr. Helen Little, they were looking at risk deficit disorder and understanding of what is an absence of risk. And what a wonderful world to live in, where young people don't have to be uncomfortable anymore and they don't have to take risks. And now we're sort of realising, oh, hang on a second, there may be something more to that. It may have been something that was a critical part of growing up, and how do we reel all that back? Understanding is the start. So this research is fantastic. Children, including adolescents, are not being exposed to graduated levels of healthy risk throughout their development years. As a result, we're seeing decreased judgment, active living, social connection and well-being. And when I look at judgment, I look at that as having an impact on every part of our lives. So when we are on the way home and we are thinking, do I go home and cook myself a good meal with lots of vegetables, or do I stop at McDonald's? That is a risk. That is a judgment that we have to take. And if we have poor judgment, then in those moments, we're affected by our ability to take risk and understand and navigate it. Next, please. So we're safer than ever, but there's less risk than ever, and well-being's in decline. It's something that we're seeing across lots of different societies, especially Western society. We are seeing physical activity, social isolation, so many things rising and rising when we have more resources and understanding than ever at our disposal. Next. The origin, where does this come from? Of course, so there's perceived safety in being as safe as possible. So we talked a little bit about, I think Tim's got a great quote about that, which I'll refer to. I also think that when it comes to families and their quick abandonment of risk, what we see is there's sort of an action bias there. And we talked about sometimes in the risk benefits analysis, do we need to do anything at all in a moment? When a young person is facing a challenge and they are saying, I am uncomfortable, I am unhappy, this is difficult, is action even required? But for families, we find that there is this feeling of, I don't want to do the wrong thing by not doing something. And so very quick to act. Increased indoor recreation, obviously screen time, decreased real risk-taking. So the only risk-taking is that which has been approved and managed. So how adventurous is that? Increased screen time, perceived litigation, which is why I'm so excited that in the discussion today we have got WorkSafe, we have got an insurance representative as well, because this is a big thing for schools when we are talking with them and outdoor groups. Institutionalised beliefs as well, which to me is when we're looking at education, and also huge, enormous changes to parenting, child rearing and education. So many changes so very quickly. Nearly there. What can we do about it? Okay, so number one, Education, okay? So this is a big part of it. So increased parent and family education, getting information to them. So I think it is wonderful that we are looking at all these ways to redesign and reimagine play spaces. But if a family is the gatekeeper and they are afraid of risk, they still will not engage with it. So we need to make sure that we're educating them. By making it more accessible and by making the spaces that obviously increases participation. We can't argue with that. But if we're on this pathway when it comes to risk, it's something we need to get involved with. Education. Introducing guidance concepts alongside the idea of child-led or adult-led models. And this is something we do at our program every day. How can we as adults be involved in a risk-taking process that is not hands-off, but it is also not lawn mowing, helicoptering, snowmobiling or snow ploughing, all of that stuff. How can we engage in those moments? What are the tools? What are the conversation elements? How can we recognise the different behaviours? Next, please. Prioritisation. So here we go. Prioritisation of risk-based education strategies for professionals. Now, this is, again, the Y Discovery team has been fantastic about that. Outdoor education groups coming to risky kids and saying, we want our teams to be able to better understand and engage with risk at camp, to be able to have those conversations, not just with teachers, but with educators. And I've got a whole plethora of stories, but I won't go into them. Normalisation of risk within institutions and organisations, especially education focused. So again, I'll harp on a little bit about the Y team, but Jim Boyle actually, who's here today, hands up Jim, dobbing you in mate. Yeah, there he is, took a series of fallen non-native cypress trees and turned them into a movement space at his camp in Manyong. So what we have there is we have tangible development of this. All right, not only do we want risks to be taken, but we need to facilitate that in a way by then creating the spaces. Have a chat to Jim in the break, ask him for some photos of that, and ask him about the experiences that the kids have been having there so far, which was wonderful. So seeing that in action, to me, that is prioritisation. Of course, we then have the fiscal side. So protections for organisations, I think, are important along these safe as necessary grounds. So what was just introduced to us before in terms of things like the risk benefits analysis or the benefits risk analysis and the various changes, those were things I didn't know. So I'm very excited to be here because to me, that is a sign that this is actually happening. We are beginning to say, all right, within the standards and guidelines, as much as it may not necessarily be a protection, but it allows organisations who may be otherwise uncomfortable with taking risks to refer back to the standards and say, we did what was necessary to make sure that the young people were able to grow, were able to develop, and were reasonably safe. Increased emphasis and support for community, private and government-led guided risk-taking programs. For example, David Strickland, Bush Kinder, enormously focused program around risk, and it's been growing for quite a while now, and I think that it's an example of that. The camp sector, of course, is another one. Adventure, outdoors personship, risk and challenge every single day. So bigger focus on that, and I know that there are some challenges being faced by the outdoor sector at the moment with things around teacher wages and things like that, and the people who are losing out are, of course, the young people. And risky kids. Yeah, go on. And last one, so close, intervention. So I think an increased recognition for non-therapy intervention-based programming. This is a conversation that I was having with Dave yesterday about the fact that often intervention-based programming results in, non-outcomes. Anxiety isn't developed. Injury isn't developed. Deep poor conditioning and obesity isn't developed. So it becomes difficult to measure those outcomes as opposed to saying potentially how many young people did we take through a program to help them with their anxiety. So a way around that. Increased support for intervention-focused research, of course. I think that's a big one, making sure that we are getting funding to the groups which are doing these. For example, Deakin, La Trobe, looking into this stuff. And I actually feel very excited and hopeful, especially because as much as Australia does measure quite poorly on some of these metrics when it comes to things like obesity and activity and appetite for risk and actual, or rather the nature of fear overriding our risk, it does seem like we are doing an enormous amount of research in this field, which I didn't expect. Fine. So this is a quote from Viktor Frankl here. To me, it's all about experience, and without getting into the deep nitty-gritty of what we do at Risky Kids, experience is what it is about. It is about challenge. It is having those moments, building up intuition and understanding of our world through experience. So I find this as a very resonant quote for me. We give those experiences to young people, and the more of those experiences they have, the more likely they are to be able to draw on them. And it's something that just can't be taken away from you at all. And let's see, because I wanted to finish by putting in some thanks. Obviously, I am done. Thanks to David Strickland and Outdoors Vic, Andrew Knight for having me here. Thanks to all the other presenters, even those yet to come as well, for putting this all together. We work with families a lot, we work with the education sector a lot, and usually it does feel like an uphill battle. So being here is often quite wonderful. And most of all, thanks to my team, it's meant to be a picture of them, for being on this ride with us, because I have very high standards, as they will all attest to. I make sure that they understand their responsibility in terms of what we are doing. But it is, without them, I wouldn't be able to do this. So to my coaches, to my supervisors, to my managers, of course to all the Risky Kids and families, it is a big thing that they are doing with us here with Risky Kids. So, and of course, thank you to all of you. Done.